Today, we want to highlight some of the biggest crashes in Formula E's 9-year history. But we're not just looking at the most spectacular crashes in the series' short history, we also want to highlight some of the most impactful shunts on the series as a whole, as well as those that had massive championship implications. So let's get right into it and count down to number 1, starting with number 10. At the 2019 Paris Prix, the race started under dry conditions. However, a sudden rain shower caught the drivers off guard in one of the first wet races in the series' history. Mayhem ensued as multiple drivers misjudged the conditions at Turn 1 in this now infamous multi-car crash, including Sam Bird, Oliver Rowland, and Alex Sims. Number 9. Season 5 of Formula E saw the introduction of the slightly larger Gen 2 cars. However, Formula E had left many of the circuits set up exactly as they had been run in Gen 1, with very tight chicanes, which led to a number of absurd crashes and pile-ups through the season, culminating in this crash at the start of the 2019 Swiss E-Prix. Robin Freins lost control of his Virgin car on the run-up to Turn 1, resulting in almost half the grid getting stuck at the first corner. Some drivers, including Lucas de Grassi, however, thought they were being clever and cut the chicane to gain 10-plus positions. After the red flag period, the drivers were returned to their original positions, leading to an amusing outburst from de Grassi. This crash was notable as it led to the series removing many of these tight chicanes from its circuits the following year and from new circuits in the years to come. Number 8. At the 2023 Rome Prix, a bumpy track on the run up the hill to Turn 7 had already caught several drivers out earlier in the weekend, including Jake Hughes in qualifying and Andre Lotterer just laps before this fearsome multi-car shunt that made its way into the history books as one of the biggest crashes in Formula E history. Sam Bird crashed on lap 9 at Turn 6 and came to a rest in the middle of the track directly after the blind corner. This meant that drivers behind had very little time to react. Buemi clipped the back of Bird's car, causing him to go airborne. Eduardo Mortara also crashed directly into the back of Bird at high speed, causing heavy damage to both cars. In total, 6 cars retired from the race due to the crash. Number 7. At the first race of the 2022 New York City E-Prix, with laps to go, rain started falling quite suddenly. Caught out by the increase in intensity, the leaders, Cassidy, de Grassi and Van Dorn, all crashed out after missing their braking points. The race was red flagged and the order from the previous lap was reinstated. This debacle led to the Formula E teams requesting much harder tyres for Season 9, so that the tyres would have enough tread in case of rain mid-race. This resulted in the low-grip, hand-cooked tyres that we saw this past season. Our next crash is one of the most shocking, but also one with very little footage. In the closing laps of race 2 of the 2021 Daraya E-Prix, Mitch Evans of Jaguar and Alex Lynn of Mahindra were battling for position. Evans came across quite sharply to block Lynn, squeezing him into the wall. Lynn's car rode over the back of Evans' car and flipped over. It then skidded along the track upside down at a terrifying speed before eventually coming to a stop in the Tech Pro barrier. Lynn was thankfully unharmed. Number 5. At the 2017 Montreal E-Prix, the finale of Season 3, Sebastian Buemi and Lucas de Grassi were locked in a heated title fight that had come down to the wire at the final race in Canada. In the second practice session, Buemi crashed heavily in the bus stop chicane after glancing off the wall at the entry to the corner. The heavy damage forced him to qualify in his second car. He was also given a 10-place grid penalty for changing the battery in the car that he'd wrecked in free practice, which forced him to start the race from 12th. To compound his misery, he was disqualified after the race for having an underweight car. While the crash itself wasn't the heaviest, it contributed to torpedoing his title chances that year. Number 4. One of the most spectacular crashes in Formula E history actually came in the very first race at the 2014 Beijing E-Prix. Venturi's Nick Heidfeld and Renault Edam's Nico Prost were battling for position on the final lap of the race when Heidfeld appeared to make a pass for the lead before the final corner. However, Prost made an incredibly aggressive and late block which caused the two to make contact. Heidfeld lost control of his car, hit a curve and flew up into the catch fencing, causing his car to land upside down. Luckily, Heidfeld was uninjured, but he certainly had a few choice words for the Frenchman on their walk back to the paddock. Prost was later given a 10-place grid penalty for the following race. Number 3. After the carnage of the first race for the 2023 Romy Prix, Race 2 followed up with a crash that had massive implications on the championship this past season. With Mitch Evans, Nick Cassidy and Jake Dennis duking it out for the championship, every point mattered. On lap 4, Mitch Evans lost control of his car heading into turn 7 and went over the back of Cassidy's Envision car. Evans retired from the race while Cassidy was sent to the back and finished outside the points. Dennis won the race, giving him an almost unassailable championship lead heading into the final races. He promptly won the championship in the first race in London. Had this crash not happened, the championship could have turned out very differently given the Jaguar-powered cars' rapid pace in London. Number 2. Next is a crash that had momentous championship implications as well. At the final race of Season 7, 4 drivers were in contention for the Drivers' Championship. Evans, who was 5 points off the championship lead, started P2. However, his car stalled off the line. The cars behind swerved out of the way left and right to avoid Evans' motionless Jaguar. However, Eduardo Mortara, second in the championship coming into the race, collided into the back of Evans, knocking both drivers out of the race, paving the way for Nick De Vries, starting a lowly 13th to win his only Formula E World Championship. And finally, number 1. Formula E wrapped up its second season in Battersea Park, London, with Sebastian Buemi and Lucas Di Grassi vying for the title. After Sebastian Buemi took pole position in qualifying, the two drivers were level on points entering the final race of the season. However, on the opening lap, one of the most shocking crashes in Formula E occurred. Di Grassi, starting directly behind Buemi, missed his braking point and collided with Buemi, sending the two drivers into the runoff area and to the back of the field. What followed was an intense affair where the two drivers limped back to the pits, switched to their second cars, and started a qualifying S shootout for the fastest lap and the 2 points that accompanied it. Buemi eventually triumphed to become the Season 2 Formula E champion. And there you have it. These are the 10 biggest crashes in Formula E history, in our opinion. But let us know, which crash do you think is the biggest in the series history?